Aiboan, and a very good evening to all our viewers here on TV1. I'm Dr. Dilshan Fernando, and this is your weekly dose of wellness here on Healthline. As the song goes, a good heart these days is hard to find. Well, that literally holds true for some people. Our program today is for those with a good heart and those without it. Today we are going to be talking about heart attacks. It's something very important for our viewers to know how to identify what the signs and symptoms are and what you should do if you are experiencing these symptoms and what kind of treatment modalities are available. So, to discuss this topic in depth, we have invited a consultant cardiologist, Dr. Hasantha Ranawaka, to talk about this topic. A very good evening to you, sir, and thank you very much for joining us here on Healthline.
Good evening, Dilshan.
Firstly, sir, now when we talk about the heart and heart attacks, more often than not, it comes with a chest pain. And there are other conditions which gives rise to these chest pains as well. So, let's talk a bit about chest pain as an introduction and how we can identify what a cardiac origin chest pain is and what other conditions can give rise to this chest pain.
Yes, Dilshan. Well, being a cardiologist, in my day-to-day practice, what I am supposed to do most of the time is to find out when the patient comes with a chest pain, whether that pain actually came from the heart or somewhere else. Of course, chest pain is not a disease. Chest pain is a symptom. Chest pain can arise from various organs in the chest. In fact, it can be a trivial reason such as a muscle pain or inflammation of a cartilage, or on the other end, it could be a life-threatening condition which could be a major heart attack, or even could be a pulmonary embolism, or could be an aortic dissection. So, it's my duty to identify whether this pain or this chest pain is something to be concerned about, something dangerous, or something we can manage with simple painkillers. So, in this decision making, there are certain things we are looking at. All of us do know that the heart is on the left side, but the heart pain or the anginal pain is usually felt right in the center. Of course, it can be felt on the left side. At times, it can be felt on the right side. There is a misbelief that right-sided pains in the chest cannot be heart in origin. That's not true at all. Sometimes even a heart attack pain can arise in the right side of the chest, but most of the time it's right in the center. That's why we call it the central chest pain. And when we talk about pain, it's a universal feeling. All of us do know what pain is. If I come near you and pinch you, you are experiencing pain. But the heart pain is not that typical pain. It's sometimes patients find it very difficult to express their feelings and explain how this pain is. In fact, most of the time this pain is felt as a tightness, heaviness. They would come and say, "Doctor, I feel as if someone is sitting on my chest. I feel as if there's a heavy stone on my chest." Or they might say, "Doctor, I feel as if there is a tight band crushing my chest." That sort of a heaviness, tightness sensation is very common with angina or ischemic type chest pain. At the same time, there's another very important thing I need to discuss. Most of the time, or in many occasions, this pain can be felt as a burning sensation. Many lay people, our people in our population, and even sometimes doctors think that burning chest pains are simple gastritis. Sometimes they prescribe a simple tablet for gastritis and send them home. They go home and die at their residence, even without coming to hospitals. So, it's a very important thing to realize that central burning chest pain has to be investigated, has to be sorted out.
Yeah, definitely. Now, that is one important fact that we want to emphasize to our viewers. Now, like Dr. Hasantha said, cardiac origin chest pain or pain arising from your heart, mainly if it's central, yes, but it can be on the right side as well. Some people think that right sided chest pains might not be of cardiac origin, And like Dr. Anavaka correctly went on to elaborate, people tend to confuse gastritis and cardiac origin pain as well. So, if you are indeed experiencing these types of signs and symptoms, do not try to self-medicate. It is always better to get the advice of a properly qualified medical practitioner. So, moving on, sir, now let us talk a bit more about this pain. Now, you said central chest pain could be left or right. Is there any other like we know that certain people say it can go to the neck, the arm. So, how does that happen, and can you elaborate a bit more on that?
Yes. In cardiac pains, there is a very important characteristic that is radiation. Sometimes this pain originating from the heart can travel to other areas, particularly both arms, not just the left arm. In fact, this traveling of pain usually happens down the axilla from the inner aspect of the arm. It can go down even to the fingers. It can sometimes radiate to the right arm also. In fact, if the pain is right in the center or more towards the left side, the chances of this radiating to the left arm is more. But if the pain is on the right side, it most of the time radiates to the right arm rather than the left arm. And at times it can go to your neck. They will actually come complaining that they have a tightness, a ball-like sensation in the throat. Sometimes it can go to your jaws and rarely into your earlobes as well. So, radiation is a very important characteristic of heart pains. Then sometimes these pains can be associated with other symptoms like sweating. If it is a major heart attack, we often find that patients come with profuse sweating, and together with it they can have vomiting, then faintish feeling. All these are, we call them the autonomic symptoms. So, if you have central chest pain with all these symptoms, radiation, sweating, vomiting, and faintish sensation, then you need to seek medical advice immediately.
Definitely. So, this is one reason why we bring these type of programs to you, so that you, our viewers, can get a better understanding of what we call these red flag signs and symptoms are. If you are experiencing these, don't just wait at home, immediately seek medical attention. Now, sir, we are having this program in times of COVID, and sometimes now chest pain and breathing difficulty, people might tend to think it's COVID as well, and now we spoke about gastritis. If you can just elaborate a little bit more briefly, how to know when to seek medical attention, whether be it COVID or gastritis or a cardiac origin pain. If you can just elaborate briefly on how we can differentiate and when we should seek for immediate medical attention.
If you are having chest pain with the characteristics we just described, definitely COVID or otherwise, you need to go to a hospital which has all the facilities to investigate chest pain and to treat. In this era of common COVID infections, even COVID infections at times can be associated with heart attacks. We very often see post-COVID patients, people who have had COVID pneumonia but they have recovered. They could be having residual symptoms like bit of shortness of breath, cough and all that. On top of that, they develop severe chest pain. In fact, we were to do this recording yesterday. We had to postpone it for today because I got a patient who was post-COVID 1 month, and she didn't have coronary artery disease before, but she came with severe chest pain. And it was found that even though she didn't have cholesterol plaques in her coronary arteries, she has formed a clot inside and the vessel was completely blocked. That's due to the increased clotability in the post-COVID period.
So, since we are on the topic, sir, now if a patient has gotten COVID and then recovered, do they have to be more mindful about these chest pains, and do they have to go for a regular checkup to see whether their cardiac health is in order?
Well, a regular checkup wouldn't help that much because this is a sudden occurrence. But if you get sudden severe chest pain, then immediately you can't actually think it's due to COVID itself. You need to exclude a heart problem definitely.
And while we are on the topic of COVID, in our day-to-day medical practice, we see so many patients coming and asking us, I have this condition, should I get the COVID vaccine? Now, with regards to patients who have heart disease, who have been followed up for heart disease, and specifically patients on blood thinners, so on and so forth, what is your advice to them? Should they take this COVID vaccine immediately, or should they get the opinion of a cardiologist such as yourself before they vaccinate themselves?
That's a very important question, Dilshan. We get many patients nowadays coming to consult us to get our OK for the COVID vaccine. If you are a heart patient, in the event of you getting COVID infection, chances are that you are going to get a severe disease. Chance of you getting severe disease versus mild disease, in a heart patient, you tend to get more severe disease. So, it's very important that heart patients who are on regular pills, they should be getting the vaccine as soon as possible. They might be on blood thinners like aspirin, clopidogrel, then there are new products like prasugrel. They could even be on very strong blood thinners like warfarin, apixaban. None of these are contraindications. In fact, if you are having heart disease, you have to make sure that you get the vaccine the earliest possible date, and that should be your first priority.
Definitely. There you have it from one of the best cardiologists in the country. If you are having heart disease, you are more prone towards getting a severe COVID infection. So, get your vaccination as soon as possible. Don't have any doubts in your mind. Now, getting back to our topic of discussion, it would be beneficial for our viewers if we can talk a bit about the structure of the heart and its blood supply, so that they can better understand our discussion as we move along. So, can you elaborate a bit on the structure of the heart and its blood supply?
Yes, Dilshan, before getting into that, I think I should briefly describe how the heart pain is felt. The heart pain is felt, this is called angina. The heart pain, the patients get angina or the heart pain due to lack of blood flow into the heart muscle. Heart is an organ which is nearly 90% composed of a muscle. Like any other muscle in the body, this heart muscle also needs blood. Heart is a unique organ in that even though there is lot of blood inside, this blood cannot be utilized for the nourishment of the heart muscle itself. For that, there is a different blood supply to the heart muscle. These are called coronary arteries. These coronary arteries actually lie on the surface of the heart, surface of the heart muscle. They are called coronary arteries, and there are 3 such coronary arteries. I am sure you would have heard about double vessel disease, triple vessel disease. Your friend would have told you, I had triple vessel disease, so my doctor recommended me bypass. Another one would say I had single vessel disease, so he put a stent. So, this double vessel, single vessel means disease in only a single vessel. Double vessel means 2 vessel disease, and triple vessel means all 3 vessels involved. So, there are 3 coronary arteries traversing on the top of the on the surface of the heart muscle and supplying the heart muscle. So, when you get blocks in these vessels only, the coronary arteries, you end up with angina and heart attacks.
So, you mentioned this term angina, and you spoke about stenting as well. We will be demonstrating how a stenting is done as we move along in the program. But since you mentioned this word angina, what is angina and what do patients feel when they get this angina?
In other words, in simple terms, angina is another term given to the heart pain. We have already discussed the features of the heart pain. So, that is angina. The central heaviness, sometimes burning sensation can be on the left side, sometimes can be on the right side, can radiate to your arms, neck, throat, and sometimes to your jaws, associated with sweating, vomiting, and sometimes faintishness. So, those are the features of angina. There are 2 variants of angina. One is stable angina. As you know, there is a condition called coronary atherosclerosis, where fat or cholesterol is deposited inside the lumen of the coronary arteries. This is a very slow process taking many years, on many occasions decades even. where cholesterol is deposited on the wall of the coronary artery within the inside of the lumen, and with time the lumen or the tube inside the artery gets narrowed. When this narrowing is more than 70%, patient starts to get pain. When they are resting, relaxed, they wouldn't feel anything. But when they exert themselves, if they climb a flight of stairs, if they walk briskly on a flat ground, if they carry something heavy, or if they are emotionally stressed, then the heart starts to work fast, and the heart muscle, due to this block, coronary arteries are unable to increase the blood flow to meet up with the demand of the heart muscle. So when they are resting, no pain, but when they exert, they get the pain, and after relaxation, after some time it goes off. That's called stable angina. Stable angina is due to the presence of stable plaques in coronary arteries. But you get heart attack when one of these plaques rupture and a patient forms clot on top of the plaque. And this causes sudden occlusion of the coronary artery. It's a sudden explosive event, and patient will get severe chest pain all of a sudden out of the blue. So that's called the ischemic, heart attack. Stable angina is what I described earlier.
If you are indeed having chest pain on exertion, on climbing a flight of stairs or exerting yourself, you should get yourself checked by a properly qualified medical practitioner. Now, sir, we talked about the symptoms, what angina is and then what unstable angina is. Now, if indeed a person is experiencing a sudden onset chest pain and is having all these symptoms that we discussed, what should they do immediately? Is there something that they can do at home, or should they just immediately present themselves to a hospital?
Number one priority would be to get to a hospital as soon as possible. Taking a tablet of aspirin chewed will be beneficial, but if you are having it readily available at your residence, then you can take the tablet and take it. But don't go running to your neighbors, don't go running to your neighboring pharmacies looking for aspirin tablets. You don't have to even stop on your way to get the tablet of aspirin to buy from a pharmacy. Your immediate priority would be to get to the hospital. Once you are in the hospital, then the staff would know what to do. They have aspirin and all other medications available. They will give the pills there. 5 minutes of delay in giving aspirin is not going to make much of a difference, but 5 minutes of delay in getting to the hospital could mean life or death. So your first priority would be to get to a hospital which has all the facilities to deal with the problem.
So in our day-to-day medical practice, we have seen patients who have delayed in coming to the hospital because they say they have waited for an ambulance or to get a car. Is there any such indication that they should come lying down, or should they wait for an ambulance? Is that required?
In fact, no. Well, I have a personal experience also with related to your question. When I was in foreign training, my uncle got a severe chest pain. I was in UK. My brother was at home. My brother was at work. My uncle lived very close by, and they have waited till my brother from Colombo to get and pick him up. That would have caused about half an hour delay. And on the way to the hospital after that, he got really bad. Rather than going to a fully fledged hospital where they have cath labs and all that, he had to be admitted to a local hospital because his condition was too bad. Then he couldn't be, he didn't receive the required medical treatment due to lack of facilities in that hospital, and ultimately 7 days later he succumbed. By the time I arrived, it was all over. I actually had to arrive for his funeral. The take home message is priority is to get to the hospital by whatever means as soon as possible. Of course, if the patient is in severe pain, I don't think you will be able to carry him in a motorcycle, but even a three-wheeler, any form of transport immediately to a hospital is good enough. And sometimes people are worried, shaky ride. might cause problems. In fact, in my practice, I take in the my common practice in the two hospitals where cath lab facilities are not available. I have to take them in ambulance to a facility where there are cath labs. Many of the time people would ask, traveling fast in the ambulance, would it cause a problem? Would the bumpy ride be a problem? No, it won't make any difference at all. Priority would be to get patient to arrive at the correct hospital.
Definitely. Now, if you are indeed experiencing this type of sudden onset pain with the symptom profile that we discussed, like Dr. Anaga said, if you have an aspirin at home, take that, but don't waste any time trying to find aspirin or trying to find a comfortable ride. Present yourself to a hospital as soon as possible. Now, sir, you described about hospital with facilities and you spoke about a cath lab. Now, for our lay people, that might not be very well understood. So, if you can elaborate a bit more on which type of hospital that they should go to, because even government hospitals, there are several tiers of hospital and even private ones. So, what sort of facilities and what type of hospital should they present themselves to?
Yes, when we are talking about treatment for major heart attacks, best mode of treatment is called primary PCI. You identify where the block is and you have to put a stent and deal with the block. These cath labs are available in major hospital. There are various private hospitals in Colombo and sometimes in peripheries also with this facility, and there are various government hospitals with this facility. So, you have to know which hospital to get to. If you have time, if the patient is comfortable, if the patient's condition is very bad, then you have to get to the nearest hospital. That's a different story. But if you have time to get him to a better center, then center with a cath lab would be the obvious best choice.
Now, once a patient presents to a hospital and they present to you as a cardiologist, how would you go about assessing these patients? What type of investigations would you employ and what would you be looking for?
Getting into that question, I just want to elaborate one thing. I told you that a heart attack is sudden occlusion or sudden block of a coronary artery. It's a sudden occurrence. Patient forms a clot and blood flow in that coronary artery stops all of a sudden. From the moment that happens, that area of the heart muscle which was supplied by this coronary artery starts to die off. That's called infarction. And in the process of this death or injury, patient runs the risk of getting a heart rhythm problem and stopping of the heart, which is called cardiac arrest. And even if the patient doesn't die of a cardiac arrest, every minute counts, because every minute, one by one, the heart muscle cells die off, and if you are late and if you take several hours to get to a hospital for the treatment, then the heart will have massive damage and the patient will end up with a weak heart in the future. So, immediate treatment is absolutely essential. So, sometimes you see patients coming to hospitals and waiting in the emergency for hours, 7 hours to get attention. But not for chest pains, definitely. If the patient has severe chest pain, then patient has to be attended to immediately, because every minute counts. We call it, we say time is muscle. Every minute which passes by, patient is losing muscle. So, the first step would be to assess the vitals, the pressure, respiration, how the patient's general well-being is, and the first investigation would be an ECG. If it is a major heart attack, in 99% of the time, ECG would show changes. In experience, hands, you can say there is a major heart attack. In fact, you can say where in the heart also you have got the heart attack. Sometimes that alone is good enough to come to arrive at a diagnosis and initiate initial treatment. But sometimes the ECG can be unequivocal. It wouldn't confirm a diagnosis of heart attack. Then you can, there are other, investigation modalities like echocardiogram, and you probably would have heard a test called troponin I. Even lay people know what troponin is. Sometimes people come to us asking for troponin investigation. They think that it's 100% investigation. Just a small word about troponin also. Troponin is a substance which is released when the heart muscles die off. So, if it is a major heart attack, when the vessels muscle cells die off, this substance is released into the blood, and this can be detected in a blood test. However, sometimes it takes 6 hours for this blood substance to be positive or to be able to be detected in blood. It takes about 6 hours. So, initial troponin I being negative doesn't exclude a heart attack. That is a very important take home message. So, blood test, echocardiogram, ECGs, those 3 investigations, and they have to be done very quickly. You can't waste time. The treatment has to be initiated immediately. So, that's how we diagnose heart attacks.
Right. Now, as we go along this discussion, one thing that we repeatedly say is time is of the essence, and that you should not waste even a single minute if you are experiencing these signs and symptoms. And once you present yourself to a properly equipped hospital, you will be given an ECG, an echocardiogram, and after that, what would be the initial treatment, sir? How would you decide what the treatment is, and what kind of treatment can they expect?
Yes, when as I told you earlier, heart attack is a acute occlusion of a coronary artery. When a patient gets a sudden block in a coronary artery, our treatment objective is to open that vessel by any means available. The moment the vessel is open, the moment the blood flow is established, the damage stops and the risk goes down, and the patient is left with a strong heart. So, the objective would be to reopen the vessel. There are mainly two ways by which we can open up the vessel. One is by giving clot busting medications, other is by doing a primary PCI. So, primary objective is to either thrombolize with tenecteplase, clot busting medication, or to go for a primary PCI where we put a stent. But in the meantime, there are various medications we generally give. Aspirin is actually one of them, and there are other various blood thinners also we use. All that can be given while the major treatment option is considered. Though major treatment, we are getting ready for the major treatment option. So, major treatment option is either giving clot busting medications or going for a primary PCI.
Right. Now, when we say primary PCI, viewers might not be very familiar with what this is. So, I am sure you would have heard the word stenting, or many patients come to us and say, I have had a stent inserted. So, today in our program, it is a very special occasion. I am sure most of you have not seen what this stent is and what happens in that. So, Dr. Ranakwa has been very kind enough to bring a stent along with us to the studio, and we will be showing you how that is inserted. So, sir, if you can explain a bit about what this PCI or stenting is, and then let us move on to demonstrating to our viewers how this is employed.
Yes, the first step in a PCI or a primary, we call it a primary PCI when the treatment stenting is done to treat a heart attack, a major heart attack. Sometimes we deploy stents, or we use stents to treat stable coronary artery disease also before patients go on to develop major heart attacks. That is called stenting. Primary stenting or primary PCI is when we do an immediate stenting to relieve the block in an acute heart attack. So, first step would be to identify where the block is. This identification is done by a process called coronary angiogram. We need to reach the heart. There are two ways by which we can reach the heart. One is from your hand, the radial artery. Sometimes we use the femoral artery, the groin artery. By that way, we can see where the block is. So, that is the first step, coronary angiogram. And if we identify an acute block there, we can relieve that block by putting a stent then and there. when we demonstrate our hardware, I will try to elaborate little bit more. For this process, we are using wires, balloons, and stents. That's how we do it.
Right. Sir, if we can just show our viewers what this stent is, and if we can elaborate how we deploy this stent, I think that will be very educational, so that our viewers would understand what this stent is and how it helps in relieving this block in these coronary arteries. So I think now is the opportune moment for us to try and demonstrate this to our viewers.
Yes, the procedure of stenting or PCI involves using various hardware. The first step would be to pass a wire into the coronary artery or the concerned coronary artery through the block. So this is the wire we use. This is very thin as a strand of hair. The front end of the wire, which goes into the heart or the coronary artery, is very flexible. I hope you can see it. It's very flexible, and the rest of the wire, which is the body, is quite stiff. So we can guide the wire into the correct coronary artery through the block, and we can negotiate the block. Then the next step, the second step, is passing a balloon. Using this wire, this wire acts as a railroad. Once the wire is in place, all our hardware, when passed over the wire, goes automatically into the correct position. We need to position this balloon to the correct place where the block is, and we inflate the balloon. If you can just assist me, Dilshan. This device is used for inflation of the balloon. This is called indeflator. It uses for inflation as well as deflation. There is a fluid filled inside, which is water mixed with contrast, and we can connect this device or indeflator to the one end of the balloon, and we can exert pressure through this device, and you can see this balloon getting inflated, and when I deflate it, you can see it getting deflated also. So you take the balloon to the right position. If I may just demonstrate it again, you inflate, opening the block, and you deflate and take the balloon out, so that the vessel remains open. Then only we use a stent. Stent also works in the same principle. We use the indeflator to inflate the stent. We will show that as well. This is a stent which I have brought. It is also very similar to the balloon, but if you can focus under high focus onto the end of that, you can see there is a metallic part there. That is actually the stent. Rest of the thing is actually the delivery part. If you can just concentrate on the stent there, I am in the process of inflating or deploying the stent now. You can see it getting inflated. Can you all see? Right. So we are in the right position in the vessel. You have to be very, very accurate and very meticulous in positioning of the stent. Once deployed, you can't change the position, and once deployed, you deflate. However, stent remains inflated. Then you take the balloon out, remain in the stent inside. That is how it works. So, in stenting, in fact, we are not clearing the block. We are not actually drilling it, or we are not taking part of the block out. We are just pushing it out, so that the lumen or the part which allows blood flow is open. So, that is how it is done. Dilshan, I have actually brought another stent. Yes. If you can just hold it on your hand, I think our viewers might be able to.
If our viewers can see this tiny coil like structure, this is what a stent is. I'm sure most of you are seeing it for the first time. Even though it's tiny in size, this is what will save your life. So, have a good look and be aware when you should get this done. So, even though this is tiny in size, how much would this cost?
Generally, in the current market price, under the current market price, a stent price would vary from about 100,000 to 130,000 rupees. That is, of course, after the price reduction or the price control came into effect during the last government. Before that, many of these stents were sold for even 300,000.
So, human life cannot be valued against money, and these tiny stents, even though small in size, will give you a very big effect. Now, moving on with our conversations, and now we deploy the stent, but we see certain people needing what we call CABG or coronary artery bypass graft, or in layman's term a bypass surgery. Which type of patients need this? I mean, stenting can be employed in certain categories, but certain people have to get this surgery done. So, who is the category of patient that needs surgery?
Yes, Dilshan, I was talking about the three vessels in the heart. I was talking about single vessel disease, double vessel disease and triple vessel disease. When you have multiple blocks in all three vessels, most of the time, more than 90% of time, it's only a bypass which would fix all the blocks. A bypass, of course, is an open heart surgery. It's a big procedure. Recovery time is long. Whereas stenting, the recovery time is very short. It's not an open heart surgery. It's a minimally invasive procedure. If it is a single block somewhere in a coronary artery, definitely stenting would be better. Even sometimes 2-3 blocks also we can fix. In fact, sometimes we deploy 5 stents in a single patient in one go also, when the anatomy is favorable. But when there are multiple blocks, most of the time a bypass would be a better. So, when we are presented with a patient, when the angiogram is done, we have to decide what mode of treatment is best for this particular patient. There could be a very elderly, weak patient who has multiple blocks everywhere in coronary arteries, but just to save his life, just to relieve his symptoms, we might decide to put a single stent in a major block only. So, that depends on each and individual case.
So, what mode of treatment is specific for you will be decided by a qualified medical practitioner. Now, sir, we discussed about signs and symptoms, the treatment modalities available. Now, let us discuss a bit about what type of risk factors will predispose towards this kind of condition. If you can elaborate more on that.
Yes, as the saying goes, prevention is definitely better than cure. So, you should know what the risk factors in order to prevent disease in the future. If you look at the risk factors, without any doubt, number 1 and 2 risk factors are diabetes and smoking. Diabetes definitely is the number 1 risk factor. Whenever a patient comes with chest pain, one of the earliest questions, one of the first questions we ask after getting the description of the pain is whether the patient is diabetic. If the patient is diabetic, if the patient has diabetes, then the likelihood of that pain being ischemic pain is higher. So, diabetes is the number 1 risk factor. Then smoking, as I told you, then high cholesterol, high blood pressure, obesity, if you are very fat, lack of exercise, then if you are exposed to excessive stress, all these are risk factors. So, you need to identify these risk factors in time and modify them so that you do not go on to develop heart attacks in the future.
Definitely. Now, if you are indeed a diabetic or a smoker, if you have a very stressful lifestyle, if you have been diagnosed that your blood cholesterol levels are high, or if you are a hypertensive, or if you have high blood pressure, you should definitely be much more attentive about your cardiac health and take your regular medications, keep all those conditions in check. Now, you mentioned obesity, sir. Now, does it mean that heart disease only comes in obese patients or fat patients rather than, don't more leaner patients get these conditions?
Well, all these are multifactorial. There could be a very obese gentleman with very clear coronary arteries. There could be a very lean person, but who has other risk factors. Particularly, we forgot to mention about family history. If he is having several family members with the heart disease, even though he is lean, he has a higher chance of getting coronary artery disease than a person who is obese but without family history. So everything adds up, and it's not a matter of having a single risk factor and it being equated to disease. So it's multifactorial.
Now, you mentioned a very important point about family history. Now, in our day-to-day practice, when we question the patients, they seem to have a bit of confusion about what this family history is about and what these first degree relatives are, because when we question a patient, they say my husband had heart disease, my second cousin or third cousin had heart disease. So, if you can elaborate a bit more about which type of relatives having heart disease will affect you.
We are actually talking about blood relationship. Your husband or your spouse having coronary artery disease doesn't expose you to the disease. If your brother, sister, or if your parents, they are called the first degree relatives. If they have had disease, particularly at young age, your father at 90 years of age getting a heart attack is not a risk factor. That's not a positive family history. But if your father has got a heart attack before 55, or if your mother got a heart attack before 65, so if this relative is a female, the age is less than 65. If this relative is a male, the age we concern is less than 55. So if your brother or sister had a heart attack before that age, then that means you also have that bad gene. You also have a positive family history.
Definitely, that's one thing that our viewers should be mindful about. If your father or a first degree male in the family has had a heart attack before the age of 65, and if a female in the family, a first degree relative having had a heart attack before the age of 55, definitely you should be more careful about your cardiac health, and especially if you are exposed to these other risk factors that we spoke about. Now, sir, with the time constraints that we have for our program, we are coming towards an end. Before we wind up, what would be the take home message for our viewers? Because heart is a very, very important organ. Actually, that is the most important organ, if I may say so, for the life to continue. So, what would be your message to our viewers?
My most important message to our viewers would be to seek immediate medical advice or medical attention in event of a chest pain. Don't delay it for any other reason. Go to a good hospital in time. That is my message.
There you have it. You heard it from the best here on TV1. If you are experiencing these type of symptoms and signs that we discussed about, time is muscle. That's the take home message. Every minute that you delay will cause a certain damage to your cardiac muscle. So, don't delay. Present yourself to a fully equipped type of hospital that we spoke about. Now, we had a very in-depth conversation today. We deployed a stent, we spoke about risk factors, all possible treatment modalities. So, we thank Dr. Hasanta Ranago very much for coming into our TV1 studios today and discussing all this. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Dilshan.
So, as we have discussed, heart disease is something that you should be very, very careful and attentive about. Having said that, we are still living in times of COVID. So, I take your leave with this message. Even though the lockdowns have lifted up and numbers are coming down, we still have a responsibility to be careful ourselves and to be careful for our loved ones who live around us. So, make sure you wear a mask, do proper hand sanitization, get your vaccines, follow proper respiratory etiquette, and let's keep ourselves safe. And with that message, I take your leave from this edition of Healthline. Until I meet you again next week with your weekly dose of wellness, this is me, Dr. Dilshan Fernando, Wishing all our viewers a very good night.